Hi. We spent the night in Odaka. I'm at an abandoned kindergarten here, and Odaka is about 15 kilometers from the power plant. And we spent the night here and now walking around a little bit. And SB is showing me around in this village and explaining a little bit on SAFECAST. And what is this, SB?
Huh?
What is this?
This is a kindergarten. It's part of a church here in Odaka, and they've cleaned it up a bit, but pretty much the kids all were evacuated because of the earthquake. And it was, March 11th. It was coming up to right on the time of the Girls' Day celebration. So all of their pictures of the little dolls for what's called the Hina Matsuri are still on the wall, and a lot of things were left just as they were.
Oh, these things were left as it was?
Yeah. The calendar is still March 11th from 2011, and the schedule on the blackboard is still showing from March 11th, 2011. So we were introduced to the
the
minister.
clock is in the back.
Yeah. We were introduced to the minister of the church, and he liked the idea of having a real-time radiation sensor here. So back in 2013, we established a radiation sensor. And it was one of the first
Is it
real-time.
inside?
It's actually on the outside. There's some equipment inside, but we can go around to the side to see where it is. And it was incredibly depressing to come to do that, because literally you could see how the kids had just left, and their little clay.
And in what year was this?
2013.
Okay, yes. So it's only 2 years after the disaster, yes.
But again, they've come and they've cleaned up and swept up, etc. But their toothbrushes with their names and their towels, and they had been making these little clay dolls. That was all left on the table, literally, as they evacuated. And again, I'm sure all the families thought, well, they're evacuating because of the earthquake. They didn't know that no one knew that there was a radiation disaster as well, but the radiation disaster is why they had to stay evacuated.
Of course.
And then they never came back.
Yeah.
And now maybe some are coming back. But I imagine this may be the church is open, but the kindergarten's not open, and who knows how long it'll be before there's enough kids living here to justify
are there
a kindergarten.
kids in Odaka?
You'll see a few. There's a few.
Okay.
I don't know how many families have kids, but there's a few.
Oh, that's kind of brave, I think. I mean, I think it's
Yeah,
okay, but
yeah.
it's brave, because when you have children, you want to be super careful,
You want
right?
to be super careful.
Yes.
And anyone who's moved back here is probably very well informed about the radiation situation. And, well, the reality is here is not different than Tokyo. It's not different from most cities in the rest of the world, and lower than a lot of cities, and people know that. You don't have to go too far, though, to find places that are much more radioactive.
Yes.
And there still has to be monitoring and caution. But to be here is, I would say, absolutely safe in terms of radiation, and people can know that rationally.
Yeah.
But it's also, again, not that far from the nuclear power plant. That'll be going through this decommissioning process for 30 or 40 years. Possibly nothing bad could happen with more radiation released, but it's not an impossible thing. So all this stuff has to be taken into account, and I would say a very, very cautious family, especially one that may be worried, would probably not bring kids back here.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the situation in every town, though, where the evacuation orders have been lifted and people are allowed to return. Very few families with children are coming back.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
Well, I'm pretty okay being here. Well, not pretty, I'm totally okay being here. But if I had children, I think I wouldn't take them.
Yeah, this is
Well, maybe just for a visit, but not to
Yeah.
live here.
That's the human nature. I think
Yes.
most families, most mothers would feel the same way.
Yeah.
And in fact, they obviously do, because they're not coming back.
Yeah. Well, I can totally understand.
Yeah. It's not a rational decision,
No.
or it can't be totally rational.
No.
There'll always be an emotional component and always some doubt, and people are totally
I
justified with
I
having
personally
doubts.
would be scared, because children go to places where they're not allowed to go to.
That's also true. Don't
Yes.
go over that fence.
Yeah, and then they will
And
go
they'll go
over
over
that
the
fence.
fence.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that I would be scared of.
Yeah. And again, that's also human nature. You have to understand people do that kind of thing, and
Yes.
children will do that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a real tragedy.
Yes.
what's happened to the communities, and this process we're more than 7 years after the disaster, and you can see this town, it's not even half back, even this main street. Many buildings are still have been demolished because they were
I
just
think it's
damaged.
like 10% of the people are back, right?
About 3,000 people out of 13,000. So it's more like not quite, 1/4, almost 25%.
That's quite a lot.
That's a relatively high percentage.
Yes, I think in Tomioka,
Yeah.
it's, well, last year it was about 8%.
Yeah. Most
Officially,
yeah.
but it was less than officially, I know.
Yeah.
And
People on paper being returned, but not
yes,
actually.
but this is
living there.
Odaka, and Odaka is a little bit further away, and it was reopened a little bit before Tomioka.
Yeah, and it's had more time for people to return. But about 10% has been consistent for most places that are reopened. A few places have more, but not many.
No.
Yeah. So the sensor is actually around the other side. Maybe go over here. Watch your step. There may be nails. This is our first real-time radiation sensor, and
Wow. It's really small.
it's small. It's a small unit, and that we basically made ourselves. And now we use bigger ones that have dual sensors
I would expect
inside.
there would be a number on it, but it's just in the database.
There may be a number on the side. I bet Joe put a number on it somewhere.
No, I mean the radiation. You could read the
it has
radiation.
no display.
No.
Yeah, that's only through the system. Although inside is a little communication unit connecting it to the cellular, telephone system.
Yes.
And I think there's a display on that, a small one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could
But
see.
most
if
of the
you
other ones
want.
have actually, when we go back to the inn,
Yeah.
in front of the lantern house we were staying, there's a newer one than this that does have the display.
Okay.
You can see that.
Because I think you want to see,
Yeah,
right?
people want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was really one of the first sort of tests to see if this whole idea would work.
Okay. Could you? I mean, now we're standing here. Tell in short what SAFECAST is.
SAFECAST is a volunteer group that began right after the disaster in March 2011 to allow citizens to measure radiation themselves and put their measurement data in the public domain so everybody could see it. So it's an open source, open data project. Began primarily with taking mobile measurements using the car or walking around with radiation detectors we developed that had GPS and data logging. And then we established a network of real-time sensors which are mounted on buildings, for instance, and are sending data constantly to our system on the web to show people what the radiation measurements are at any time. And we have 17 sensor installations in Fukushima now, including one that's only 2 kilometers from Fukushima Daiichi.
Will we visit that one today?
Possibly. I asked, but timing may not work out, but we could certainly visit it another time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool.
great.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a little one, but it's still working. So, and this was a very collapsed house building here before, and
Looks quite okay. Kind of.
yeah.
Or
Actually, it's hard, but this was collapsed, and next door was one that was really depressing. It was an old wooden house that had totally crumbled, and really the roof with the tiles, the original roof was now at waist height, and it was just obviously a beautiful, beautiful old wooden house. And again, it was just the earthquake that did that. So you have to realize the earthquake damage is as much as what killed this town as any kind of
course,
radiation.
yes.
Yeah.